Hey, this is Sean from Time and Talk. Today I thought I'd make a kind of two-part video. The first part talking about a book that I bought. You may already be able to guess what this is. And the second part discussing a watch that I bought yesterday that kind of surprised me with the quality at such a low price, hence the title of the video. The book is this book, A Man in His Watch. I bought it with a voucher that I got for Christmas from a relative from Amazon. It's £15 on Amazon. It's really good value because it's like supposed to be £30 or something like that in the shop. I'm just going to run through really briefly my thoughts in case anybody cares. So in terms of this book, it's a really nicely presented book. I mean, for a £15 book, I know the retail price is more expensive. It's hardcover. It comes in a little kind of dust jacket like this, and if you open it, you see one of Paul Newman's Daytonas, and then there is a bunch of stories about men. It is only men actually, and their watches, and some amazing photos of those watches. If you're a watch fan, you will have heard some of these watches before, but you will definitely learn something about watches from reading this book. Okay, so in terms of my thoughts of the book, I did really enjoy it. I was a bit apprehensive before I bought it because you'll have seen the book on Instagram, etc. And it's a very Instagrammable book. It's very nice looking. It's got a nice page cover and things like that. And I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit Hodinkified, if that's a name. You know, lots of rich people talking about lots of watches that us guys can't really afford. It's not so much like that really, because the contributors themselves are not all that varied, to be honest, but the watches are relatively varied. So the author of the book chooses a Winnie the Pooh watch that his mum, I think his mum, no, his nan, bought him from the Sears catalogue, you know, and things like that bring it to life a little bit. So in terms of what do I think of it, in terms of the good things, the pictures are great. Loads of lovely watches against a kind of black background that really shows them off, and you will see some watches in this book that you probably haven't heard of, and you know, give you a little bit of an insight into watch history, because it's not only individual contributors, it's also historical watches. JFK's Cartier, for example. I do think that the book gives us a little bit of an insight into like why we like watches. So the guy who wrote it, he's called Matthew Hranek. He introduces the book with the story of his dad's Datejust, I think it is, and you know, says that this is why he likes watches, because he saw his dad wearing it and things like that, and that kind of is what it's all about, really, I guess. And people have said that they've been moved by this book, and I felt that when I was reading it. You know, it's not just about the objects, which in a sense is kind of good for us because it makes us feel a little bit less shallow for liking these things. As well, the contributors generally, I thought, you know, they were quite good, and they explained why they like watches, and give some good examples and things like that. Great coffee table book, you know, you delve into it every now and again, flick through the pages. In terms of some things that I didn't necessarily like so much about it, some of the contributors weren't as interesting as the others. I don't want to pick on him, but Naz springs to mind. You know, he picked a Patek and he said not many people wear this watch, you know, implying that he was being very idiosyncratic by wearing a Patek Nautilus. It's like everyone with money wears that watch, you know, come on. And as well, some of the writing is not necessarily, I mean, what I think the author does is try to let the contributors speak themselves in their own voice, and that could work to a certain extent, but also, you know, they're not writers, they're not storytellers, so I don't know if the writing was as good as the pictures. As well, I just thought that some aspects of it could be a bit more detailed. You know, you've got a few sentences like that about these watches, and the whole point of the book surely was, you know, to try and get at some of the depth behind the hobby, I guess. So yeah, I would recommend the book. It's a nice looking book. Someone like me, if you're like me, I don't like to keep books on the shelf. as soon as I read a book, I tend to take it to a charity shop or throw it away or whatever. Recycle it, should we say. So it's not something probably that I'm going to keep in the long term, but I did really enjoy reading it, and I would recommend it, particularly if you like having those, reference books on your shelf, which it's really for you in that case. So I also bought a watch yesterday, hence the title of the video. I thought that I would take a look at it and have a think about what this means for watches in general, in terms of the price of watches and what you can get for your money. So flip to a different perspective. I'll explore the watch. Okay, so this is the watch that I bought yesterday. The watch that I'm referring to in the title, the only watch you'll ever need for less than a tenner. So I was just walking around the shops and I saw this watch. It was in TK Maxx of all places. I think the retail price is slightly higher, but I thought I'd just give it a quick review, see what I think of it, and think about what that price actually means for our kind of watch collecting and things like that. So I did a quick bit of research on Casio watches, and obviously Casio watches have been going forever. So in 1974 was the first ever quartz digital watch, and it was called the Casiotron. And then this particular model, or not this particular model, what I'm assuming is the descendant of this model, the AQ500, was released in 1982, which was the first ever watch with an analog and digital display. So I did some quick measurements. They're not going to be amazingly exact because I did them with a tape measure, as you do. We get some calipers soon, but so according to my measurements, 30mm for the diameter, 39mm for the lug to lug, and 18mm for the lug width. And so this watch is pretty tiny by today's standards. It's what I originally assumed, perhaps naively, was a stainless steel case, but it's a resin case, plastic case essentially, and a stainless steel bracelet with, you can kind of extend the bracelet manually. You don't need to take any of the links out and stuff like that. I'm sure you've all seen a Casio quartz before. This watch was £9, and it has a bunch of features actually. So obviously it's got the analog display without seconds, it's got the digital display, and then it's got the date and the month, an alarm, dual time, so a time in a different time zone, it's not set at the moment, a stopwatch, and that's it. Pretty impressive list of features for a watch that cost £9. And this watch, I actually really like it. I published a picture on my Instagram account, and somebody said, that's the exact watch that I had for when I was a kid. And these watches are, you might associate them with younger people or whatever, but it is actually a really nice watch. I mean, it's really well proportioned. The design of it's really good. Obviously, it has to be because it stood up for 40 years or so. I really like the proportions of the watch. It's got, loads of features for a watch that cost £9. And it actually looks really nice on the wrist. So, show you a wrist shot. So there it is on the wrist. I've got 6¼ inch wrist, so I think that's smaller than the average. I think watches of this size look really nice on me. But if you've got a bigger wrist, I imagine it'll work as well, because these watches are classics. And the issue is really, do we need anything else other than a £9 watch from TK Maxx? This is light. It's comfortable. It wouldn't be particularly hard wearing, but you know, does it need to be? Just buy another one if it fails. It's got genuinely useful features that would cost a lot of money on a mechanical watch. And this little watch is pretty much the quartz crisis kind of exemplified in a little watch, because why do we pay what we do for watches when we can get a watch like this, which is genuinely useful, pretty stylish. I mean, you might not like this watch in terms of its style, but I think nowadays these watches are like ironic style statements, Del Boy wore one, so and things like that. So, particularly younger people, people like these watches, and they're by no means high end, but I think you could pull this off in a relatively smart occasion, because it is pretty nice. I mean, hit me in the comments if you don't agree. If you take a couple of my watches from my watch box, Seiko Alpinist is 35 times the price, at least 35 times the price. Is it 35 times the watch? Just throwing it out there as a discussion. You might think it is. And then you've got the Explorer, which is 500 times the price, at least 500 times the price, probably 600 times the price. Is it 600 times the watch? I mean, from a purely accuracy and features standpoint, the Casio kind of wins. So I just think it's kind of interesting from that perspective. I wore the watch all yesterday, and I actually really like it. And I don't know, with modern watches, often with modern watch companies being owned by kind of super corporations, kind of what you're getting with this is an unpretentious, useful timekeeping device. Whereas what you think you're getting with a more expensive watch isn't necessarily that, because, for example, Swatch Group owns Omega, so are you really getting an Omega in the historical sense of the word? Don't want to get too deep on a Sunday morning, obviously, but yeah, tell me what you think of the watch. Tell me what you think of a man in his watch. What you liked about it, what you didn't so much like. Would you wear this watch? Could it be your only watch? I mean, the only real drawback is it says water resistant, but I imagine splash resistant. Yeah. So thanks for watching. If you like my channel, please subscribe, because every subscription helps. Thanks very much. Bye bye.